The America First Legal Foundation, combating the left's radical agenda.
Fight for the American people, defend the Constitution, and save this nation for the next generation. Hey everyone, this is Gene with America First Legal. Thanks for joining us on the second episode of The Arena with America First Legal. I am here today joined by some of my colleagues. To my right is Alexa Vance, who you all met last week. To my left is Julie Strauss, who was not here last week, but who we're thrilled to have with us today. And to her left is Ian Pryor, who was not here last week as well, but we're always happy to have on board with us. And as we do these episodes going forward, you'll notice that folks on our team, they'll kind of come and go. We'll have different personalities here, different people with different takes on different episodes. But today is a really, really exciting time. Today's special guest for the second episode of The Arena is Tom Homan. Who's that handsome guy right there?
Gene, the dance machine.
That's right. You know it.
Thanks for having me, Gene.
Absolutely. Look, Tom, there's something I'd like to get into just from the start. Now, folks at home, I think now know that you have decades and decades and decades of experience in the law enforcement community at all levels, local law enforcement, Border Patrol, ICE, and everything in between. Could you describe for the folks at home precisely what kind of cooperation you're seeing today between ICE, the federal government, and state and local jurisdictions all across the country, and how that compares to how it used to be maybe under the Biden administration, and of course, how it used to be going back historically?
Well, it's a mix. First of all, our cooperation, our formal cooperative agreements, 287G, our partnership, either task force or jails, where law enforcement agencies work with us to identify criminal aliens and process them and remove them from the country. We have a record number of 287G agreements right now, a record. I mean, well over 1,000. And there was a time during Trump 45, I think we had, about 400. So
Yep.
we really have got a lot more 287G agreements from local and state law enforcement agencies. On the flip side, we got sanctuary cities. Our
Right.
sanctuary cities are being more defiant and cooperating less. But I see that turning now. I think after Minnesota, where we were able to sit down with people that we didn't agree with on much and explain to them, letting us in the jails means less people in the street looking for the people you released. I think Minnesota is less of a sanctuary state now because of that. I'm hoping that kind of footprint we can develop in other places. I've already met with the governor of New York talking about it. And I just think I'm hoping between the DOJ lawsuits against sanctuary cities, plus our reaching out, trying to work with them in a manner that makes sense, we can get above that hurdle a lot better than we have been in the last decade.
Yeah. So let's get into the cooperation just on the ground, what it means, because a lot of folks hear 287G, a lot of folks at home hear about cooperation between ICE and local jurisdictions, but they might not know what you and I know from the kind of the boots on the ground perspective of the way that it works. So can you describe the way that in an ideal scenario, ICE would interact with somebody when a criminal alien is arrested in a local jurisdiction, and kind of what that flow looks like in terms of transfer of custody and all the associated activity?
Well, we're not asking local or state law enforcement to be immigration officers. We're asking them to help us target, arrest, and remove public safety threats that are here illegally, right? So in jails, we have agreements and they accept our detainers. When people need to understand, when you get booked into jail, if I get booked into jail tonight, your fingerprints will run through NCIC. They also bounce against DHS databases. So we'll get a notice that this person was just booked into Homan County Jail and is somebody we have a warrant for, or some we have a deportation order for, or somebody we've encountered before. We have a record on. Now we got a biometric hit of someone we're looking for is sitting in this county jail. So the jails we have cooperative agreements with, they'll detain them long enough for us to come get them when they're done with them, right? And what that does is prevents that public safety threat to be released back in the public, which is just stupid. Think about that.
Right.
And the danger on that is when you knowingly release a public safety threat back in the community, it puts the community at risk because you just released a public safety threat back into that community. It puts the officers at risk because rather than arresting them in the safety and security of a county jail, now we gotta go on the streets and find him on his turf where he has access to who knows what weapons. It's safer for the alien because anything can happen on a street arrest. Things can go bad, right?
Right.
So we must prefer that. And what and that is, we got a record number of that happening right now with record number 287 G agreements. It's safer to arrest the public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail. Again, and for the sanctuary cities that say we don't want to do that because we're a welcoming community, we want victims and witnesses of crime that are here illegally not to worry about us working with ICE. They will come and report those crimes with no fear. That's a bunch of crap, right? Because the victims and witnesses of crime, they don't want the bad guy back in the neighborhood either.
Right.
And we're not even interested in speaking to victim witness. We want to talk to the person they locked in the jail cell. So that sort of cooperation improves public safety. It improves the safety of our officers. And when we can have one officer arrest one bad guy in the jail rather than sending a whole fugitive operations team to find him in the field, think about that. 6 or 7 people are now trying to arrest this one guy that one agent could have done quickly, more efficiently in the jail. So now we have these agreements in place. Now, rather than having those 6 or 7 guys looking for the person, we got one agent at the jail. What does that mean, Gene? That means there's 6 other guys that were on that team. They can go out and look for other targets, right? It puts more guys out there. So it makes sense. And I've always said, I met with a lot of chiefs, a lot of sheriffs, and I always said, look, we're not asking you to be immigration officers. That's our job. We want you to be law enforcement people that work with other law enforcement people to protect your communities and remove public safety threats, not only from the community, but from the country. It just makes perfect sense. So in Florida, incredible participation, right? Because the governor down there has got every sheriff and every chief on the program. Texas, great cooperation. Tennessee, it's spreading quickly, and I think by the end of the Trump administration, I'm hoping between DOJ actions and what we're doing, I'm hoping sanctuary cities be a thing of the past.
So Tom, I know that for you and I, we've both spent a lot of time in federal immigration enforcement, but let's kind of rewind. It's 2026. 30 years ago, Congress passed a law that Bill Clinton signed into law that had all kinds of enforcement provisions in it, enforcement tools that have made ICE's job easier to do, at least in theory. Not that it was necessarily always done until the Trump administration. But can you talk about your perspective, being kind of front line, going from Border Patrol to INS to ICE, in kind of the political dynamics that you see today surrounding the immigration enforcement debate? I mean, you touched on a little bit of this just a minute ago, talking about some of these sanctuary cities that want to be welcoming or that want to be, they say that they need to protect their communities against ICE. But just go back in time and put yourself in your shoes when you were working with INS, Legacy INS, 1996. Congress passes this law. Bill Clinton signs it into law. Would you have predicted that in 30 years that the political dynamics, especially on the left, would be the way that they are today when it comes to something like just enforcing our immigration laws and deporting people who are here illegally?
Like I say this many times, I worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. I worked for 11 different administrations, right? And every president I worked for, including Clinton and Obama, took steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have strong national security if you have border security. But of course, no one did more than President Trump. His success is unprecedented. And when it comes to interior enforcement operations, Bill Clinton, Obama's first 4 years, we're hitting it hard. Matter of fact, President Obama gave me the Presidential Rank Award for Distinguished Service because we removed 409,000 illegal aliens that year, which is a record for the agency. So it's always been about law enforcement, positive law enforcement. The numerous times I testified during those administration, members of Congress, they respect that law enforcement officer sitting at that table testifying that we're there enforcing laws they enacted. It was about how we enforce those laws, right? So we had a lot of support for border security, border enforcement, immigration operations, even though it's always been controversial, and I get that. But what we're experiencing today, this political fire we see today, I never dreamed in million years we see it. So, I'm involved in negotiations up on Hill trying to reopen the DHS, right? And they say they want to reform ICE. They don't want to reform ICE, they want to end ICE. Right. They want to tie their hands. So, and you got politicians, whether the governors, mayors, or members of Congress, now want to call ICE racist and the Gestapo, the secret police. The rhetoric is just terrible. The violence against ICE officers, based partly on that hateful rhetoric, is at an all-time high. Threats against ICE officers up over 8,000%. Actual assaults are up over 1,400%. So we've never been in the situation we're in right now, where the immigration debate has turned on its head, where members of Congress does not want a federal law enforcement agency to enforce the laws that they wrote and they enacted and they appropriate them funding to do. Right. So this is where we're at, and it's become a real emotional topic, and who's paying the price? Who's paying the price? Are the agents wearing that gun and badge who are taking the hate, taking the doxing, taking the threats, taking the assaults, and also the American people. And they're taking it because they're trying to tie our hands so we arrest less criminal aliens. And let me be clear on something else. The Dems will say, a lot of politicians, again, the governors, the mayors, and a lot of the lawmakers say, ICE should be concentrating on the criminals. That we all agree on the criminals, but they lock us out of jail. So, and they can't square that. They can't say concentrating on criminals, but we're going to support sanctuary jurisdictions. We're going to lock you out of our jails, and we're going to continue to hamstring ICE. And look, we want some legislative reforms that basically, I can tell you right now, are going to tie ICE's hands. For instance, getting a criminal warrant to arrest an illegal alien. You and I both know that's not in federal law. No. Federal law says administrative warrant. That's what Congress wrote. Because that's the process. Right. But now all of a sudden they want criminal warrants to arrest illegal aliens. If we give them that, might as well shut down ICE, because we can't possibly arrest 20 million people because you don't have that many magistrates issue criminal warrants. So we're at a place now that it's hard. It's hard for the officers out there doing the job to keep doing their job. They're going to do it. They're going to show up every day and do it, but it's hard for them even to absorb the fact that members of Congress will vilify them for simply enforcing the law. You can't name another fed. Have they asked the FBI to stop enforcing the law? Have they asked DEA to stop enforcing the law, or ATF? No. It's about immigration enforcement. But you got my word now. I said this for the last month I've been involved with these negotiations. I will not give them a single thing that will tie the hands for ICE officers. Can't do it. I'm not going to take their priorities away. I'm not going to take their authorities away, which a lot of it talking about taking their authorities away. No, we're in a battle. And thank God President Trump's in the Oval Office, because ICE and the Border Patrol are finally upholding the oath they took, enforcing laws they're supposed to enforce that they weren't allowed to do 4 years under Joe Biden. Right. So we went, and just put in perspective, Trump 45, we had the most secure border in history of this nation. Within 60 days of Joe Biden taking the Oval Office, we had historic illegal immigration on the southern border. The most secure border to historic illegal immigration in a matter of 3 months. Then what did President Trump do? He came back, Trump 47. We went from historic illegal immigration to the most secure border, even better than Trump 45. No, more arrests than Trump 45, more deportations than Trump 45. We're running hard. We got our foot on the gas. And it could be so much better if we had the efficiencies of county jails across the country, all of them, and not have the sanctuary policies. But the rhetoric, the hate that feeds the media, that feeds these groups that want to attack ICE, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I know DOJ's working on the funding of who's doing all this, but It's bad. It's I've never seen right now the last poll I saw that a lot of Americans don't like what ICE is doing, and I don't believe that poll, first of all. And if there's any truth to that poll, is because they're reading all the stories in the media simply aren't true.
Right.
That 14% of everybody arrested criminals. It's crap. It ranges between 60 and 70%. But then they want to redefine what a criminal is. So the attack's on against ICE, but I really think the attack's all about Trump. They hate President Trump. They hate him more than they love their communities. They hate him more than they want to remove public safety threats from the communities. Now, I'll end it with this, that every mayor, every governor, every city council member, every elected official, the number one job is the protection of their communities. And when ICE is concentrating on those public safety threats, you should be shoulder to shoulder with us. That's a winning game. So, but the fake media, members of Congress, they're taking us to task on, simply doing the job we're supposed to be doing, doing the job that they appropriate us funding, massive funding to do. So
yeah, so
we'll win this battle. I think that the truth will come out. American people will be educated, but that's where we're at. So we're at a place now that I never, in my 42 years of doing this job, never thought it'd be this bad as far as the rhetoric and the hatred toward federal law enforcement officers.
These are just men and women who are they're doing their job, they're serving their country, they're going home to their families, right? They don't deserve to be doxxed, they don't deserve to be targeted, they don't deserve to have their families targeted because of who they are, the oath of allegiance that they swore to the United States, the Constitution, the laws they execute every day, day in, day out. I mean, it is very, very maddening just to watch even from the outside. Let me ask you a question about something else that's different with this administration than even the last Trump administration, and probably very different from prior administrations you've served in, is the ability to rapidly respond to false media narratives. You were just talking about some of the fake media stories that go out there. There's, you name the outlet, they'll run some story about some poor guy who ICE is deporting, who has a child who is in the United States, and they'll make it a big sob story. And you get down to the bottom of the article, 3 pages in, and you see, oh yeah, so-and-so has 5 DUIs, was convicted for beating his wife, and has, not paid taxes in 30 years or something. And so they bury all of that information. But now it seems as though in this administration, there is a very conscious attempt to rapidly respond to some of these false narratives and get information directly in the hands of the American people. Can you describe kind of the way that changes things operationally, or at least the way that you're able to kind of talk about and respond to people, to inform them with actual facts and details about things that actually do happen, and not just be subject to the whims of some person in the fake news media?
Well, I said from day one that we need to be transparent with American people, because, like I said, immigration enforcement has always been controversial, right? So we need to be transparent and let the American people know exactly what we're doing, because we can't lose the faith in American people. Right. So there's a hard effort on responding to a lot of fake media stories and getting the truth out. And I think we're doing a pretty good job at it. I actually think we got to do more of it. Matter of fact, me and my chief of staff been talking about, a better social media campaign and getting information out there. I think that's going to be important, because we can't lose the faith in American people. But one thing I see that from the fake media is that not only do they bury it, but they'll print a story based on information they receive from a reliable source, an unidentified source.
Right.
Then we prove that story's wrong.
Right.
Through facts. You never see another follow-up story saying, well, we were wrong. Now, I've seen stories where, people were raped in ICE detention facility, and FBI does an investigation, OPR does an investigation, ICE does an investigation. Absolutely did not happen. Nothing even close happened. But did that media outlet ever retract that story and say, investigation was thoroughly conducted and it was false? They don't do that.
Right.
Again, this is a conscious effort to turn the American people against immigration enforcement. So when they get to the polls, they'll say, "Oh, I can't vote for this guy because he supports immigration enforcement. He supports ICE." It's all a distraction to the American people. So yeah, we're pushing hard and getting the truth out, but I do say we even need to do better. For instance, when there's a Congressman said they won't let us in the ICE facility because they don't want us to wait a certain number of days. I get it, but I think we should let them in as soon as they show up. We got nothing to hide. We got the highest detention standards in the industry. I think any congressman goes to an ICE detention facility, it's better detention standards than any state, local facility out there. I bet my reputation on it because I know what detention standards are.
Right.
We spend over $1 billion a year just on medical care for our detainees. So let them in. Be transparent. If we find something, we'll fix it. But I'd be proud to put them in ICE detention facility for a review better than any state prison in this country.
Yeah. So,
open the doors, be transparent. And I think one more thing we got to get them better on is getting the data out there. I mean, I speak every day to the media and I quote data, because I read the reports every morning. Those data points need to be sent out wide to show the American people that, a majority of people we arrest are criminals, despite what some media outlet says only 14% were. Let's send the data out and prove them wrong. So, yeah, there's a hard push in that. I think we're doing a pretty good job, but we got to do a lot better, to be honest with you. And that's one of the goals I have. I've been talking to some folks who understand social media, understand, putting the story out there to the American people. So we're doing good. We got to do better. And I think the more we do that, the more support we're going to get from American people whose only news is CNN or MSNBC, and they think that's factual. We need to work really hard on pushing as much information out as possible. Again, I'm not going to say we're not doing it, but we got to do it better.
Yeah, Tom, I've got a question from a person online. Their question for you is, what are some things that the everyday citizen can do to help the day-to-day efforts of the men and women of ICE to hold those responsible for breaking our country's laws? So what kind of response would you have to somebody at home who just wants to be supportive, wants to make a difference, wants to help you and help the men and women of ICE and DHS do their jobs? What kind of practical things can they do?
There's a lot of things. So first of all, under the Biden administration, almost 500,000 children were smuggled into this country, separated from their families, put in the hands of criminal cartels, were smuggled in the country. And the Biden administration released hundreds of thousands of them to either unvetted sponsors or not properly vetted sponsors. They lost track of about 300,000 of them. The Trump administration has already found around 145,000 of them, 145,000 children that last administration wasn't even looking for.
Right.
So I've asked for the public, if you see a child, and most parents have that innate ability to see that something just ain't right, whether you see a child working someplace or you see a child in an uncomfortable situation with an adult, make a phone call. Even if one lead out of 1,000 turns out to be a victim of trafficking, you're going to save a life. I also say, keep your eyes open in your neighborhood. You see what you think is illegal immigration activity, whether it's an employer that is hiring illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, or whether it's a load house nearby or any sort of immigration information you have, it's a phone call. Make a phone call, DHS, their 1-800 number. Make a phone call, drop the information. Because again, you may be not only reporting illegal immigration, but some of those immigrants may be national security threats. You may be helping, to shore up our national security. Some of these are going to be victims of trafficking. Some of these illegal aliens that you may see working in a facility here, they're working someplace, they can be forced labor. They can be forced to work for nothing and paying off smuggling fees. Some of these women can be in sex trafficking. If you see something illegal immigration related, just give us a call, give us a lead. And in addition to that, the children and the illegal immigration, what was equally important, I think, you see an ICE officer, a Border Patrol agent, thank them. As you said earlier, they're getting doxxed. Their spouses are getting doxxed. Their children are getting doxxed. Just give them a handshake. Tell them thank you for the job because they're keeping this country safe. Look at the numbers, right about 800,000 removed since President Trump's been back in the Oval Office. If you take 60% of them, let's just say 60, be conservative, like criminals, you're talking about over 500,000 criminals removed from your communities.
Right.
Thank these men and women. They don't get paid a lot of money. It's a more dangerous job now than it's ever been because of the threats. And give them a smile, give them a thank you. It means an awful lot. And as you can see, what we just did at the airports.
Yes.
You know, President Trump had a brilliant idea. Let's send them to the airports and help TSA, right?
Yep.
They weren't wearing masks, were they?
No.
You know why? Because they're in a safety and security airport. They're not out in neighborhoods looking for criminal aliens and having 50 agitator protesters threatening their lives and assaulting them, where they got to wear the mask to stop the doxing. ICE agents don't want to wear a mask.
Right.
But it's a necessity because of the threats in the field. So, as I told members of Congress, you want the mask off, then stop your rhetoric. You can't say we want the mask off, then go do a TV interview and say they were Nazis and racists in the secret police. Stop the hateful rhetoric. Hopefully the threats decline, and maybe we talk about the mask coming off. But, you know, those three things: help us with the children, help us with, if you see illegal immigration crime and you witness that, and thirdly, thank the men and women who do this job every day and put their lives on the line.
Those are awesome tips, Tom. And I got to say that the airport thing, I talked about it on our last episode. Again, this week, great experience. ICRO in the airports. I see them. I say thanks. They're doing awesome work there. I've never seen TSA work better, quite frankly. Maybe there's a correlation there, but I'm not going to go there just yet. Let me just ask you one clarifying thing here, just to make sure that folks understand the numbers that you just mentioned. You said 800,000 removals so far. Is that the general ballpark of what the administration's done from the interior of the United States?
I look at the data between ICE and CBP. We're right about 8.
Wow. And then 145,000 children have been discovered. Was that the number you said earlier?
Yeah. Yes.
And those were
right around 145,000. Now, people need to understand, out of that 300,000, many of them have aged out, which means they're over 18 now.
Right.
But as I said from day one, just because they're aged out doesn't mean they're not a victim of sex trafficking or forced labor. We're still going to find them. And look, we're not going to find all of them. I mean, I think we already have ascertained that. I think the number was 11. 11 have died.
Yeah.
Some from natural causes, some from drug overdoses, some from other reasons. And, you know, it's hard to find children because they don't have that digital footprint that you and I have, right? We own homes, we own cars, we have credit cards, we pay utility. We can find us.
Right.
But a child don't have that digital footprint. So it's awful hard work. So now we have to count on the digital footprint of the sponsor who was properly vetted. We go to the addresses on file, and they're a shopping mall, or they're a parking lot, or a church, you know. So the HSI and FBI is doing a great job, and Office of Refugee Resettlement and HHS, they're doing a great, tremendous job. But as I said in the past year, we're not going to give up. When we exhaust every lead we have, we'll go back and do it again. But, you know, tips from the American people, tips from America's moms and dads, on something they see would also be helpful.
Awesome. Tom, let me ask you a couple quick questions that are just totally off the subject. But I want to get in before we have to go here. What's your favorite movie all time?
Favorite movie all time? Well, I got a lot of favorite movies.
Well, you got to give me one.
Well, how do I pick one?
I stumped Tom Homan. I mean, this is a record. This is a new record for me.
There's a lot of great movies. I mean, if you're going classic, Gone with the Wind, a great movie, right?
Yeah.
If you're drinking beer and barbecuing some sort of pig or cow, it's Animal House. I mean,
Animal House.
So many different movies.
Yeah, classic.
If it's a romantic movie, it's, you know, Officer and a Gentleman. I mean, you know, sweeping the lady off her feet in the end, right?
You're a very cultured gentleman, Mr. Homan. You're quoting some classics there. So
if it's a thriller, you got the horror movies. I mean, there's so. I guess it's what what generation I'm talking about, and but I'm a movie guy. I mean, I love movies.
Yeah, that's great. Last thing, what gets you up in the morning?
This job. I came out of retirement twice. I took a huge pay cut coming back, with just like Pete Hegseth did, just like a lot of people did, right? Took a huge pay cut. Because I love this country, number one. Number two, I promised the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol that I would always have their six. And after 4 years, what Joe Biden did to this country and Alejandro Mayorkas did, I woke up every day pissed off. Because doing this job for so long, I knew, okay, you're talking about 10,000 aliens a day coming across the border, average. Some as high as 13, 14,000, right?
Right.
So when that border's wide open, how many women got raped last night by the cartel members, the smugglers? How many children died last night?
Right.
How many Americans died from drug overdoses of fentanyl came across that border? How many billions of dollars did the cartels make this past week? How many known suspected terrorists crossed that border and got away? Every morning, I'm serious, every morning I get up and I'm pissed off. What they did, the Trump 45 most secure border in history, wasn't an accident, wasn't incompetence. It was by design, because they saw a future political benefit of letting millions of people in this country either overturn the Trump census rule, they get counted in census and live in a sanctuary city, which ends up more seats in the House for the Dems,
right,
or where they thought they're future Democratic voters. They sold this country's national security out for future political power, where they thought it was future political power. So I was pissed every day. Matter of fact, when President Trump called me up the second time, one of the comments he made, he said, well, you've been bitching about it for 4 years. Want to come fix it? So how do you say no? First of all, how do you say no to the president of the United States? Number two, I wanted to fix it. I wanted to fix it because I've stood in the back of a tractor trailer with 19 dead people at my feet, including a 5-year-old boy that baked to death. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 that were raped multiple times by the criminal cartels. So knowing what they did to the border, I was pissed. And I came back. I came back, number one, because I love my country. And number two, I love the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol. I want to get back doing that job. Number three, I want to stop the death and destruction that the last administration caused.
Yeah.
And I'm proud every morning I get up. I mean, look, I get tired. I'm getting up there in years. I get tired, but I read a hit piece about me or somebody just fire that they're throwing gas in my fire, or I see stories. I know how many children we rescued. Think about it, 145,000 children were located. Not all were in danger. Some were with their families hiding out, but too many were in sex trafficking and forced labor. Right. We saved their lives. So how do you not get up every morning to do this job? So I'm here at the last day of the Trump administration. If they want me to stay longer, I'll stay longer. I'll work for any president and let us do our job.
Yep. Amen.
I'll never tire from supporting the men and women that carry that badge and gun. Not going to happen.
Tom Homan, you're a patriot. We know that you're doing great work for the president, for everyone in the administration, for the American people at home. If everyone just listened to you, I think this country would be a far better place. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and good luck. I look forward to hearing about how many people you've deported tomorrow.
You got it. Thanks, Jane. Appreciate you.
See you. All right. Well, that was a really fun discussion with Tom. We talked about so many things. One of the things that we hit on with Tom is, look, I don't know how familiar everyone is with his background. He was a cop on the streets for a while. He was a Border Patrol agent. He worked with Legacy INS, and he was with ICE. He rose the ranks. He even mentioned the award that President Obama gave him for deporting over 400,000 people from this country. And so he's got a lot of experience in law enforcement. And one of the things he was talking about is the number of cooperative agreements that the administration is getting today with state and local jurisdictions across the country under the 287G program. And he was talking about the importance of state and local cooperation and the ways that it helps everybody in the community, both amongst the citizens and also amongst the immigrant community, when people are not allowed to be released onto the streets and reoffend. So my question, open question for everybody, I guess we'll start with Ian because he's at the far end, but we see legislation from like Virginia. Abigail Spanberger seems to be pushing. We see sanctuary jurisdictions across the country. Where does this opposition come from? What's your take? What do you think folks are coming at this hostility to the federal government.
But that's a great question. And you mentioned, back in the 90s that Clinton signed these packages into law. He actually ran an ad in 1996 bragging about how many illegal aliens the Clinton-Gore administration had deported. Yet here we are 30 years later where, you have your liberal white wine moms out protesting in the streets, get ICE off our streets. How about you get off our streets, please? You're blocking traffic. It's the next thing, right? Obviously, it's clear that Democrat lawmakers are using this as their message. They want more voters. They want more representation in Congress through the census. And that's what they're doing. And you talk about the 287G agreements. Here in Virginia, we have Spanberger now who said, well, look, the state police is not going to cooperate with ICE. We're not going to have a 287G agreement. And on her desk, which could get signed next week or could become law if she doesn't sign it, is a bill that would prohibit all localities from entering into 287G agreements with ICE. And so if you're out in Loudoun County where you have, Sheriff Mike Chapman who cooperates with ICE, he's not going to be able to do that anymore. And what you're going to do is you're going to Fairfax the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. And for those people that haven't been paying attention to Fairfax, it's been on the news nonstop because they've had 4 murder cases this year, and 3 of them have been by illegal aliens. And they have a prosecutor, Steve Descano, whose website says that if 2 individuals are charged with the same crime and one of them is deported or is subject to deportation, it's a travesty of justice. That's insane. And that's what's coming to places like Virginia when you elect people like Abigail Spanberger. You're going to see Virginia be like California, be like Illinois.
I mean, that's insane. I mean, that seems to me at its core, that is the definition of an equal protection problem with the laws. A citizen, I see this play out in other jurisdictions across the country where citizens will be more harshly prosecuted or sentenced than an illegal alien because of the potential immigration consequences that flow from a criminal conviction. And to me, any country that's halfway sane would treat its citizens better than the folks who aren't supposed to be here in the first place. But in Fairfax, I guess that's not the case. Julie, I mean, what's your take?
So, first of all, what does a 287G agreement mean? It basically talks about cooperation, right, between local and state law enforcement and the feds. If you ask anybody other than your white liberal moms who have nothing better to do in the middle of the day but to stand there and protest.
And drink wine.
Yeah, and drink wine. Not good wine. Yeah. Do you think that all these levels of law enforcement should cooperate with each other for the sake of the security of our streets? They're going to look at you like you're crazy. Like, of course you should cooperate. So we had a case, for example, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and we've had other sheriffs come to us, and they basically knocked on our door and they said, we want to cooperate. And we just got sued by none other than the ACLU. Can you help us? And AFL went to court, and it was established by the judge, like, of course, throughout the case against the ACLU, and said to the sheriff, you have the constitutional authority to cooperate with the federal government. Like, this is so logical that it's hard to argue with people who blatantly approach life with a political agenda. So if you look at what states have sanctuary cities, or even sanctuary states themselves, like Washington State, like California, you can definitely see there's the blue states and there are the red states. And we all know that blue states absolutely are in it 100% for sanctuary cities and sanctuary states to give. What does that mean? To give protection to illegal aliens over American citizens. And it defies all logic.
Yeah, no, I mean, people say 287G, as a just a common phrase these days, at least. But 287G refers to an actual section of the Immigration and Nationality Act that empowers state and locals to do this. And one of the things that Tom and I were talking about, and one of the things that comes up often in these types of debates, especially when we're talking about members of Congress, is that there were prior members of Congress who went through all the hard work to get a consensus, to move a bill through a committee, move it onto the floor, get the floor to pass, get it bicameral passage of the law. The president signs it into law, and then no one does anything with it. But the law is there, and then people cry when the laws are on the books are actually enforced, and members of Congress yell and scream. But one would think this is actually what you want people to do. If you write a law as a member of Congress, you would think that you would have some reasonable expectation that the executive branch at some point in time would at least try to enforce the law. But in so many of these cases, they haven't. They've bended, they've twisted, they've turned every law, every statute that's in the books, in the INA, to the benefit of the illegal alien and not the American people. Another thing that we talked about with Tom, Alexa, related to the media. And related to media coverage, and it related to the kind of the fake news, the way that they describe anything that is done by ICE, not based in reality, not based in facts, but based on feelings and based on lies and false information. And so, I guess from your perspective, from a press perspective, why do you think that people have such a hard time being objective and covering things from a balanced standpoint, just presenting facts and letting people draw their own conclusions?
I think mainstream media is so biased at this point. I mean, they can't tell the truth. They can't just share the facts. There's always a spin. I mean, what was that story with the 5-year-old that that ICE, took into their custody to protect because his dad ran off when they were trying to arrest him? And then the media was like, ICE has arrested a 5-year-old or 3-year-old, however old he was. I mean, it's crazy. It's so dishonest and it's wrong. And it's really an uphill battle because every single one of these stories does have a spin, and it's almost impossible to combat every single one. So I think the best thing that you can do is just to get the truth out there, however that is. So these are the facts. Like, the facts are what they are, and I think we're doing better now with getting that information out there. But I think that that's the best thing that we can do to combat the lies.
And they have short attention spans too. I mean,
That's true.
let's go back before President Trump was in office, and you would turn on the news, well, some news stations, and you would see what looked like the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, and Sugar Bowl crowd all getting out and rushing the border at the same time. Of course, those crowds all had to go through metal detectors, so, not so worried about them. That's why we need enforcement now, because of all the people that came in unvetted. We don't know who they are. Right. So now more than ever is the time that we have to say, look, we need to fix what happened. Yes, we've secured the border, but what about the fact that millions and millions of people came in here? We need to fix that.
Yeah.
Right. And look, President Trump charged Tom Homan basically with 3 tasks, right? Secure the border, engage in mass deportation, and find those kids.
Yeah.
Find the kids who are missing. Does the media talk about that? I mean, I always wonder, like, your parents, like, I want to yell at the television. What President Trump has done and what Homan has done through President Trump's directive, what do you say, 145,000 children have been, I mean, that's absolutely mind-boggling. These are children who not only did the Biden administration not care about, but didn't even try to find.
Right.
So it's shocking, and they just absolutely, they ignore it. They absolutely ignore it. And it's not just immigration. I mean, they do this on everything. When you see these press conferences, like, I want to sit there with the popcorn because you watch President Trump talking to the media and Secretary of War Hegseth or whomever, and the media is so brazen and so disrespectful. Like, even if you don't like the guy, how about a respect for the position?
Right. The
This is
office,
the president of the United States.
Right.
At least speak respectfully. And it's so disrespectful. So you mentioned ICE before. Threats against ICE officers are up 8,000%.
Yeah.
Is the media talking about that?
No.
No.
Talking about the fact that families can't take their children out, families of ICE officers?
Right.
The whole discussion is that they shouldn't get to wear a mask. Could you imagine during COVID walking out without a mask and what the media would have said?
Oh,
It is like absolutely, it's unbelievable. These are people who are willing to put their lives on the line day in and day out for us. 8,000% increase in threats.
I mean, it's just it really is crazy. And again, this fundamental concept of Congress passing laws, the executive enforcing those laws, and being charged with faithfully executing those laws. And yet, when those laws are faithfully executed, in fact, they result in efficient deportations of people who came in violation of those laws, that somehow then you become a Nazi, you become a fascist, you become somebody who doesn't believe in human rights. When quite frankly, the opposite, I think, to me, seems to be true. You devalue American citizenship if you allow anybody to come across the border. You devalue how special it is in the commitment to the Constitution and the things that made this country great. But just by allowing anyone to walk across the border, and then, hey, sure, yeah, their economic contributions are increasing GDP. Fabulous. That's great. So somebody has increased GDP by, $22,000 by working off the books in the landscaping industry. But at what cost? And when you multiply that times millions and millions of people, and it flies in the face of exactly what Congress put in the Immigration and Nationality Act in 8 U.S.C. 1225 that governs the way that aliens are supposed to be processed and detained in the border environment. It just seems to me fundamentally inconsistent with what our founders would have intended when they set up our Constitution. Now, look, it was a different time, different place, land to colonize. It was a very, very different world technologically then. But if you had gone back in time, or if we were to go back in time today, and with the time machine, and go tell George Washington, go tell James Madison, go tell Thomas Jefferson that in the year 2026, millions of people from foreign nations would be able to invade United States territory. In one side of the Congress would call the people who are actually enforcing the laws that are on the books from the federal government that were enacted as a result of the American people sending their representatives to Congress. They would call those people Nazis and fascists and every name in the book. I think they would look at you like, well, what in the hell are we about to do? why are we going to start this country? I mean, it seems so crazy.
You're absolutely, and you know what? The word invasion is so apt. Not only was it invasion, but during the Biden administration, we, the taxpayers, put them on airplanes. Like we paid for it. And AFL is involved in a lawsuit where 20 states and the District of Columbia sued the government, sued the administration for a very simple requirement in regulation saying if you want to get welfare, you've got to prove you have lawful status. Seems logical, right? 20 states are contesting that. So what AFL did, because obviously you have to have standing, you have to show that you're harmed in order to be a plaintiff, right? Filed requests to all these different states saying, really? Well, how are you harmed? How are you harmed by when somebody comes in and seeks welfare payments by putting in place a system that says, Julie, you got to prove that you're here lawfully. So they go ahead and they sue, and AFL files requests to these different states saying, oh, well, this is like really unfortunate. Show us how you've been harmed. We've already had, I think, 4 or 5 states like Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Rhode Island that can't prove anything. So again, like they go at it through lawfare, through whatever means, saying that laws shouldn't be upheld. And this is like yet another example of the domino effect of illegal immigration in our country that, we are fighting. It's sort of like, what's the expression when you have like somebody's trying to plug up the hole here? I mean, that's kind of what AFL does. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, and it's not just crossing the border illegally, right? It's also taking advantage of asylum. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the story this week of the real housewives of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that use the asylum program to come in here, become influencers in LA, then they go back to Iran, right? And then they come back. So there's obviously no fear of persecution in Iran because look, they're not going to get in trouble because of who they are, right? Asylum fraud. This happens all the time as well. I mean, the system needs to be enforced or else we're leaving ourselves severely open to some big problems in this country.
Yeah, I mean, look, whether it's the border, whether it's overstays, abuse of the asylum system, birthright citizenship is obviously another big issue. There's so many issues that are out there. We could spend every single episode of this podcast covering a different topic. Now, I don't know how much the folks at home would enjoy that. I know I would, but it's not everybody. But to y'all's point, there's so much that people just don't even really. I think it doesn't even register because it's like in the Matrix. The folks just aren't ready to live outside the Matrix. They've been so programmed by the legacy media and false information to think a certain way about when it comes to the immigration subject, that when they're faced with reality and truth and objective facts, they have a really hard time processing it. It just it doesn't even register with them.
But here's what I think is common sense. The American people overwhelmingly voted for this president.
Right.
Swing state, it's crazy. They understand what's lawful, what's not lawful. If you're here illegally, you should leave. If I'm speeding and I get stopped just because the next guy goes flying by at 20 miles an hour more than I am, I can't say, wait, you didn't give him the ticket, you gave me the ticket. I did something unlawful. If somebody's here illegally, they need to go.
Right.
Now, I know Tom Homan talks about prioritizing, right? And if you've got two illegal aliens, and that's what they're called under the law, we're not being rude or fresh as the media says we are, and somebody has committed 30 crimes and the other person has not, Tom's going to prioritize and get this bad guy out before that one. But anybody who's here unlawfully should not be here.
Right.
Very plain, very simple. And the American people get that, despite what the media tries to tell them, despite what's going on in Congress, what the other side not wanting to enforce the law. I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
People get it.
Right. Well, I mean, people get it, and I think that it's a good transition to our next segment, which is that I think that a lot of people, when it comes to the law and in the immigration space, I've just been exposed to dozens and dozens and dozens with compounding interest of bad legal takes when it comes to immigration enforcement. So we're going to get right into our next segment now. This is time for this week's bad legal takes.
From viral bad arguments to headline mistakes, we're calling them out on bad legal takes.
Julie, what's your bad legal take of the week?
Well, we had oral arguments before the Supreme Court on birthright citizenship, which I think some of us are very hopeful the justices will rule according to the Constitution, but it remains to be seen. So Justice Jackson, in the course of oral argument, made the statement, if I steal a wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me. I can rely on them if my wallet is stolen. That's allegiance. What does she mean by that?
I mean, my God, I can't believe this person is on the Supreme Court of the United States. I mean, maybe it's not surprising because she couldn't even define who a woman is.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, this is just such a false notion that people have when it comes to birthright citizenship, that somehow being subject to the jurisdiction thereof means you can be subject to enforcement of laws. Of course, every sovereign government has the authority to enforce its laws against someone who violates them within their territory, within their sovereign territory. But the notion that there's some kind of a mutual allegiance that is bestowed on somebody when they violate a country's immigration laws. So if I guess her thinking is that if I fly to Japan, let's just say I steal someone's wallet in Japan, and while I steal someone's wallet, my wife gives birth to a baby in Japan, that somehow now we're all entitled to Japanese citizenship because we're subject to the jurisdiction. I don't even follow. It's insane.
It's so illogical. Plus, you fly to Japan, you're still an American citizen.
Right.
Your allegiance is to the United States of America, not just because you happen to be in Japan.
Right.
So it is so devoid of logic. But you're right. She couldn't even define what a woman is. I think she actually needs to recuse herself of any of these cases that involve gender whatsoever.
Honestly,
That's
a good point.
It's the true Billy Madison moment, right? Where everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to that argument. I award you no points and may God have mercy on your soul.
Well, Ian, what's your bad legal
Well,
take of the week?
this is an interesting one. People probably have seen this on the internet. There's a couple of bad legal takes within this one. This is an attorney named Rob Hopkins. Now, Rob is not a man. Rob's a woman pretending to be a man who is practicing in some court. It's all over the internet. Just type in transgender lawyer. You'll see it. She's getting in the judge's face after the end of the hearing. Now, anyone that's been in court, look, you get a bad ruling, you get something you don't agree with the judge, you do your best during the argument. Once she makes the decision, that's it.
Yeah.
And you go
You're done.
appeal or you
Yeah.
figure something else out. You don't continue to be there berating this judge over and over and over again. That's a bad legal take to do that because that's going to get you held in contempt, which is exactly what happened. Rob Hopkins was held in contempt, but Rob Hopkins' legal take as to why she was held in contempt was, this is because I'm a transgender lawyer practicing all over the state.
Oh,
No,
my gosh.
it's because you do not get that you cannot yell at a judge after a ruling. That will get anybody held in contempt. And I thought the judge was actually pretty reasonable. The judge could have done that after 2 minutes, but it went on for like 5 minutes. Insane. They just want to be victims.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? Like, don't you think this was like a purposeful thing, right? Sometimes people do that. They mess up in court. This, to me, was purposeful, right? Like, they
Absolutely.
wanted to make an entire political issue of the fact you're just picking on me because it's
Always be the victim.
always.
So there's no free pass if you're
There's
trans.
no free pass.
So word to the wise, whether you're trans, whether you're whatever, it's not a good idea to insult a judge to their face or to defy a judge to their face. Is that fair?
It's fair reading of the
I
law,
think
yeah.
that's pretty fair. I think
You'll be held in
yeah.
contempt. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, look, then it's my turn, which is fun because this is a very fresh one from a former Republican congressman. So I say that, and I think everyone probably, the wheels start spinning. And we have one from Adam Kinzinger, who, in response to a post from the President of the United States on social media, says, about 5 hours remaining until President Trump says a whole civilization will die tonight if the Strait of Hormuz isn't reopened. This is a war crime, full stop. All right, well, let me tell you one thing right now. Anytime someone says full stop in their quote about a legal matter or a factual matter, it's probably wrong. It's probably full of crap. If you use full stop at home right now, please, for the love of all things holy, stop using that phrase. Adam, you're so wrong. And look, I mean, this is just absolutely insane. Legal take. The notion that you're going to have that there's some kind of a threat on social media. Oh, this is a war crime, full stop. I mean, like the Trump derangement syndrome just infects people's brains and makes them do the dumbest things that you would have. Like, I mean, can you imagine? Well, I guess you can. I was about to say, can you imagine a member of Congress, a sitting member of Congress doing this? But I guess these days we can.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is a former member of Congress who all they want to do is get attention. And so they say the craziest things and things that they have no basis in fact, no basis in law. They don't understand the way that things go. And of course, within a matter of hours, the president announced that the Iranians had agreed to come to the table. Now, look, we'll see what happens as a result. But I mean, give me a break. That was not only a bad legal take, it's a bad factual take. It's a bad grammatical take. It's a bad human take. Please, again, for everyone at home, do not use the phrase full stop. No one will take you serious for anything else you say for the rest of your life if you use the term full stop after everything you say, especially if you write it out.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's like you read this stuff and you kind of want to do a, face plant. And I wonder, like, who has a greater incidence of Trump derangement syndrome? The left or sort of the XRs, right?
Yeah,
Is
that's
it
true.
like
Yeah.
the kid, like,
Question.
and you're right. As you started, I'm thinking, gee, it could be this one, and I immediately went ahead to be one of these following Republicans, and unfortunately, it's getting bigger because these people are out of control.
Right.
There's like no logic whatsoever in their thinking.
Well, they get so much
Good
more
job.
attention
Well,
if
yeah.
they, if they go against their
Well, plus-
party.
Plus, all of a sudden, they're loved by the media.
Right.
Right. And
They're like-
that's like so
Right.
important to them.
Right.
I was going to say, Adam Kinzinger tweeted that, but I'm sure he was on CNN shortly thereafter saying the same thing
Yeah.
on air.
Well, I mean,
So,
it's
be.
very likely true.
You got to get yourself on what is it, MS Now, or is that what it
MS
was
Now.
before?
No,
I
it's
think
it's
it's
MS now.
What was
MS
it
Now.
before MSNBC? It was
MSN
something. It was something. Well, who knows? Who
Yeah,
cares?
who cares?
It's fake
Yeah, it's
news.
still fake
Uh,
news.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's many more bad legal takes that we could get into. I think we're out of time for today. As I said last week, if you have a bad legal take, or if you have a question for us about something that you want to raise for our attention, for our consideration on next week's episode, send us a note, send us an email. We've got all the details right here below the screen. It is at thearena@aflegal.org. If you want to reach us by email, all of our other contact information is displayed below. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, your attention. Spread the word amongst your family, your friends. Stay tuned for the announcement about next week's guest. It's going to be an excellent time, a lot of fun. Hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. And to my colleagues here from America First Legal, thank you for being here today as well. Thanks for all your comments, good insights. We will see you all later.